Welcome.
One of our, Matt brings Starbucks coffee and his dad's office.
Good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock. The meeting has been started.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dave Sorm, member of the Underground Safety Board. Joining me today is my colleague, Vice Chair Travis Clausen. He'll be a little bit late. We appreciate everyone taking the time to participate in today's workshop and contribute to this important discussion of the next stage of planning and design. We have a quick administrative note. For those attending virtually, please take a moment to familiarize yourself with your emergency exits and evacuation procedures. For those in the room, should we need to evacuate, please proceed out the conference door, the only one, and exit through the front of the building. Today's discussion is an important step in shaping a consistent and practical framework informed by stakeholder knowledge and experience around planning and design information exchange. Before we begin discussion today, we wanted to remind everyone that the workshop is scheduled for 3 hours only. Make sure we get through all the necessary topics. We ask that the participants follow the structure we provide in the upcoming slides. And here is my colleague, Travis Clausen. I already introduced you, by the way. Welcome. We recognize that there may be additional topics or questions be discussed, but we request that the participants to wait until the appropriate section or wait until the regular workshop questions have been addressed. This will help us stay focused today while ensuring all items get the attention they deserve and leave room for additional questions at the end. Under Government Code 4216.1B, the statute directs the board to determine through regulations the appropriate timelines and standard processes associated with the planning and design information exchange. The information required to be shared in the format in which it shall be shared. Any requirements that excavators and operators are required to fulfill to accomplish this information exchange. Board must adopt regulations by July 1st, 2027. Stakeholder input gathered through workshops like this one we are holding today will play a critical role in shaping these regulations. For today's agenda, we have organized the workshop into 3 primary discussions. We will focus on the standard planning and design ticket process, the roles and responsibilities, and lastly, cover procedural challenges and practical constraints. We will conclude with closing remarks and outline upcoming engagement opportunities. As a reminder, the questions on the following slides are intended to guide discussion and help us gather practical input from your experience in the field. Discussion 1, standard planning and design ticket process. We will start our first discussion topic, the standard planning design ticket process. In this section, we'll focus on how planning and design tickets function in practice, including operator response, timelines, quality standards, minimum information requirements, and how design data is coordinated and maintained over time. The goal is to better understand current workflows, operational realities, so that any future framework reflects how this process works in the field. The following questions are intended to guide discussion and draw from your experience. We will begin by focusing on how planning and design tickets are used in practice. First, what triggers the discussion to submit a planning and design ticket versus submitting an excavation ticket? For example, it is project-based, depends on the project cost, size, project construction risk, internal company policies. Second, when should a planning and design ticket be initiated in a project life cycle for it to be meaningful in early design phase coordination and reducing potential conflicts later in the project. For example, early in the design phase or final design, such as within 3 months of construction start. And finally, how are planning and design tickets currently initiated? Which platforms are primarily used? Are stakeholders submitting through the regional notification centers, internal systems, direct outreach, or other tool. We'd like to better understand current workflows so that any future framework builds on what is already working well, addresses gaps, and implements something that is cost effective. Demands. This will help us better understand what is workable and consistent with operational capacity and how to address such gaps. For those attending in person, please raise your hand and state your name and organization. For those attending virtually, please use the raise hand feature or down *5 to enter the queue. We will start with those attending in person. No question? Good. Moving to those attending virtually. Is there anybody online?
One online comment, James.
Go ahead. Can you hear us?
So you ready for something yourself?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you
Okay,
state your
right.
name and organization?
Yeah, my name is Jimmy Griggs. I work for the Sonoma County Water Agency. I'm in the design engineering group. I'm a civil engineer. I work primarily with linear underground projects like pipeline projects. And I find yeah, during the early design process, you always reach out to local utility purveyors, PG&E, the local water supply, sewer supply, so on and so forth. You get record drawings, you get as-built drawings occasionally, but in relative to like hard data, if you're making critical decision points, for example, you need to do a trenchless installation and there's a large pit that you need to construct, and you need to make sure you have a large clearance. You can, from those record drawings or from those like the documents that are provided by those different entities, you can somewhat dictate whether it's on the east side, west side, north side, south side of the street. But relative to like precise locations, the only way to get that information is to call in like an excavation ticket and do a pothole. And something that I feel like would be extremely useful for me as a design engineer is if I didn't receive so much pushback from the different entities when I'm submitting those tickets. Because the only reason I'm submitting a USA ticket is because I need to know what's out there. You're in a chicken and an egg situation, right? If I'm trying to design a new pipeline, I need to know what's there before I go and dig. And if you aren't allowed to get that information while you're trying to decide where the pipe's going to go, then you ultimately run into conflicts during construction, which cause delays and translates to lost taxpayer dollars, right? So to me, having a tool for a design engineer to get that hard data where it's essential would be extremely beneficial for me.
Okay, thank you. You're saying the as-built drawings or record drawings aren't qualified enough to do your design?
In certain circumstances, they can be. In other circumstances, they are not. PG&E's drawings are notorious for not being very accurate. If I were to use, for example, their GIS shapefiles to just put directly into my CAD model, I literally just ran into this on a project a couple of years ago where we were actively advertising the project, and the shapefile provided resulted in a situation where we were going to be installing a 27-inch diameter sewer line directly in conflict with a gas main. And the only reason that I was able to catch that was because I actually called a USA in to verify the location And then that ended up resulting in a changed design during the advertisement period of our project, which was obviously a high pressure situation. We were able to get it done, but it just the accuracy of various drawings just is not always. I can't rely on it for its accuracy for design purposes. No.
I understand. I used to do that for a living also, but now I'm a contractor. But usually when I was doing underground design, anything within 2 feet of the proposed conduit, we'd ask for a pothole crossing pole perpendicular or running along parallel to it. And it's always a good rule of thumb, and then you'd ask for an excavation ticket to do that.
Correct. And you would
Yeah.
pothole during design?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way that that's the loophole that I've been able to identify is so,
Right.
going and potholing during design at those particular locations. But that results in calling in a ticket, right? So
Right.
if you're required by law to mark out your utilities within 2 feet with the paint, then why do I need to go and dig a hole? I'll dig a hole if I need to know precisely where it's at in space, but if I need to know approximately within 2 feet, then why can't I just get the paint without having to dig a
Understand.
hole?
Thank you. We'll take those comments into consideration. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, is it appropriate, and I'm not sure what the format is here, but I would be very curious to hear from that gentleman from the Water District in Sonoma, how long in advance that he would like to know that information. And if he had the opportunity for a design ticket, how long before construction? What's the timeline that he's thinking?
Depends on, are you still on the line? I don't believe so, but I can tell you from my past experience, I mean, it could be 9 months to a year.
9 months a year.
Yeah. You start out with 30, 60, and 90, and then we used to send them each time to the utilities that were identified where you're gonna dig, and then have them verify it, and then you have them sign off after the 90.
I think that's critical for the board to understand, because, currently we're working within 14 days, right? And as you develop a regulation,
Right.
It would be, I think, helpful to the industry to know, hey, you could have, or the engineers say, you can go up to, 9 months in advance to request this.
Right. Exactly. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, I'm still on the line. My mic.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's okay. My mic was muted. But somebody unmuted me again. So in response to the gentleman's question, yeah, and I agree with your response as well. 9 months to a year might be a little conservative. It might be a little short. I mean, sometimes these are like 2 years in advance. If you have critical environmental permits that you're trying to obtain, and those environmental permits could be a year plus out, and so you could be at 30%. Generally our rule of thumb is we establish our alignment by 60% design. So normally when I'm doing my utility research, it's at 30%, which could be, up to 2 years before you even, get a piece of equipment onto the job site. And if there's some type of, if we're looking at establishing a new regulation, a lot of pushback that I get from utility purveyors when I call in these tickets is because of that time crunch, right? And perhaps there could be a little bit more leniency for a planning and design ticket for maybe the response time is 30 days, right? Like, and that would be okay for me. If I could submit a planning and design ticket and just know that paint's going to be on the ground within a month, then I can coordinate with my survey team and I can coordinate with my in-house crews to go and shoot that paint once it's on the street, so that I can have hard data that I could then utilize to design. And then it provides so much more efficiency for when you're going to dig in the ground. your plans are accurate. They aren't just approximations based off of record drawings. They're hard data that's been shot by your surveyors so that we can know what's in the ground ahead of our digging, and it's just going to result in fewer delays, less lost money during construction, and more productivity. Yeah, I always say my job as a design engineer for the Sonoma County Water Agency is to translate taxpayer dollars into hard infrastructure in the ground. And the better that we can translate, the more efficient we can make that process from taxpayer dollar to pipeline in the ground, I'm all for it. So if the purveyors are fighting for, we don't want to have to go and do this stuff, and they need a little bit more time because they have limited resources in their USA response departments, then by all means extend the timelines for these planning and design tickets. I'm just saying I need this data to do my design work effectively, and how I obtain it is how I have obtained it in the past is by finding loopholes, by saying I'm going to go in pothole, but then I just need to get the paint on the ground so I know what's there before I go and tell the contractor to start digging.
Thank you.
James Wingate from USA North 811. This is also for you, Jimmy. So I love where you're going with this. The feedback I hear at USA North 811 in relation to these design requests is I love the attitude about saving the taxpayer dollars and so forth, and having the design information up front. But and I hope this is, as you put in this new 27-inch sewer pipeline, that you are capturing that install with precision so that when the next design engineer comes to you, you can share the data and that it's better than the stuff you are getting, or at least have been historically. You see what I mean? So that when the shoe's on the other foot, the data you are capturing is being provided in a timely manner to the next design engineer. And so I think that's the challenge we're having. So you've got one side of the house who wants design information working for a utility operator, either directly or indirectly as a design engineer or as an in-house engineer like you are. But then the other side for their construction is asking for unreasonable, what some utility operators may consider to be an unreasonable time frame about how fast they want records and how precise the records need to be. And some of this stuff is just old and they don't have it as precise as it can be. So the feedback I hear at the 811 center is that people aren't, or utility operators don't complain about pothole requests if the pothole request is precise. Like if you say, I'm looking for this PG&E gas line and I know it's about right here, and so my ticket is a relatively small area. But if it's, I want 3 blocks, entire width of the road, curb to curb, plus 100 feet in on both sides, that's when they start to complain because they feel like you're kind of fishing, I guess. And so I think that's the challenge we're trying to overcome.
Thank you. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Todd Blumenstein, representing the Southern California Contractors Association. Just 2 points. One, to respond to James. I think everyone would agree that receiving as much information back in that installation is important. The question becomes, who's reporting that information? If it's a third-party contractor that's doing a street job, should we be required as the excavator to go back and say, here are all the installations that we encountered for your records? That's not what we do. That's not the role of an excavator. A contractor takes specifications and design and they install or construct a project. Now, if an agency wants us to pay us to identify those and go back, well, then that's understandable. But again, I think sometimes when we start talking about this for the greater good, if you will, there's a blurring of roles and responsibilities. So just wanted to respond to James, but I think we all agree more information is better. The question is, who's going to be providing that information? And then secondly, I'm curious with regards to James, I believe it was Sonoma County Water District. With regards to upwards of 2 years, let's say they get their planning and design information 22 months before construction starts. Are the conditions going to be the same? Right? That's a question for James. Mr. Chair, if he could reply, I'd be interested because I have no idea. When you go that far out in advance, oh gosh, what's changed between?
Yeah, sometimes you I remember right, we would shelve projects and then you'd have everything complete, but then you have to pull them off again. Then you do another utility request to make sure that what you have on the plans is similar to what you have in the field at that particular time when you get ready to construct. Yeah, and there's been problems with that too, because you have utilities going on all the time.
And perhaps the 811 ticket can then kind of confirm that, right?
Right.
You've got to decide.
And what we used to do also is that you would do the planning and design request or marking. And then we would get the drawings, and then what you would do is go out and verify that the markings on the street are the same as what you have as far as the record drawings or as built. It's difficult, especially with non-pressurized pipe. You have gravity. And yeah, you have to watch that. You have health issues too with the sewer versus water and all that other stuff. All right, thank you.
Sir, we got three more comments.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
First comment is from Royce. When you're ready, please unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. This is Royce Bedrosian, Contra Costa Water District. I'm the superintendent over the pipeline maintenance. So with us, we generally have our locators that will get a lot of tickets through 811. And we generally will get a planning and design ticket every now and again that'll go towards our engineering side. And then our engineering side will do our best to just basically give what plans, conflicts, and everything out. But just like everyone else, our plans are only as good as what we have in archives. So a lot of times we get things that are a little bit, old. They don't quite represent the newer entities and facilities that are located around it. And then so when we get the pothole design and everything that we want to go try to find and locate with our staff, we basically go off of old things, old markers, old monuments, things like that. And then if we find out they're way out of alignment, they're way out of things. So our USA Locate staff just basically work with the contractor in question and try to get like a negotiation, kind of like a workaround, where, it's not an emergency, it's not going to get done tomorrow, but if we can say, go out and do maybe a couple of blocks of identifying, laying down paint and certain things, and then check in with them and then keep everything going. We hopefully keep them up to date with the USA ticket so they can keep it going. But we generally just have to work kind of a lot of our own little workaround systems. And a lot of times it's just generally, a relationship that we would have with the local contractors and the local engineering firms that help us kind of put together the things that we need to make sure that we are giving them accurate plans or accurate locations of our facilities. A lot of times it isn't, and it just results in frustration, but on both ends, because we're frustrated that it's not where we think it is, and they're frustrated because, they don't want to guess and just shoot under an intersection, find out the hard way they hit a 20-inch main. And then everyone's upset because we have a huge damage ticket. It comes back to who, what, when, and where. And for us, it's just, it kind of goes back to, we just have bad data. We have busy schedules and we have time constraints, and we just work with our individual contractors so they don't go in and put in a USA emergency ticket or just a dig ticket just to try to compel us to go ahead and go mark and everything within a timeline. So for us, it's like an ongoing thing, but it seems like there needs to be something between the design ticket versus going straight to an excavation emergency dig ticket for just a small pothole or a small excavation where we just basically have to drop everything, go out and mark it and then hope it's right.
Okay, thank you.
Second comment is from Patel. Sir, when you're ready, please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear us?
Sure you unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry, sorry about that. Hi, this is Ankur Patel from AT&T. I'm a director of regulatory here. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to share that we're supportive of the concept of the planning and design information exchange. However, if there is a requirement set here, we believe that the requirement should be limited to large scale projects. We've seen that other states appropriately restrict these exchanges to projects that either exceed a certain cost threshold or are based on some certain project scope, which helps avoid unnecessary burdens for routine or small scale work. So in that vein, we believe that small projects such as pole replacements or things like routine maintenance should not require the planning and design information exchange.
Okay, thank you.
Last comment is from Logan. Sir, when you're ready to speak, somebody.
Hi, this is Logan Downer with Excavate 11. I just wanted to add that we should take some caution in strictly looking at the marks as a reasonable or reliable method for what's in the ground. What our customers are finding in the field quite a bit is that the marks are not indicative of what's there. We're not very often getting the number of conduits that are installed or their size. And so to strictly look at the marks could create a possibility for maybe an increase in damages.
All right, thank you.
Animal comments.
Thank you, appreciate it. We'd now like to explore quality standards and minimum information requirements under what,
If you want to break, I can take this.
what,
If you want to break, I can take this.
you're there yet? That's it. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to explore quality standards and minimum information requirements under which, what circumstances should subsurface utility engineering or SUE be required as part of the project requirements during the planning and design phase. What minimum information should be required for planning and design ticket to be considered sufficient? Too little information may limit an operator's ability to respond effectively, while overly detailed requirements may create unnecessary burden early in the design phase. With that in mind, does provision of utility maps records constitute the minimum information? You got too far. Or did I? Oh, sorry.
It's like I'm ready.
Where are we at?
Eight.
Yes. Oh, that's close.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You were rolling. I can go back to the airport.
Yeah.
All right. No worries. So we would now like to focus on operator response timelines. First, what are realistic operator response timelines for reviewing and responding to planning and design tickets upon receipt? We recognize that practices may vary. For context, some states have defined operator response timelines. For example, Missouri requires a response within 5 working days, while Illinois and Georgia require responses within 10 working days, typically through drawings, records, maps, or in limited cases, field markings. From your perspective, what time frame reflects operational realities here in California? And second, does project scope affect response timelines? For example, when a project is geographically large, technically complex, or involves limited or outdated utility records, how does that influence the time needed to review and respond? In those cases, what internal protocols or processes are followed? Do operators provide partial responses or request a meeting? Provide responses over time. We're interested in understanding not only the timeline itself, but also how responses are fulfilled in practice when scope or complexity creates additional demands. This will help us better understand what is workable and consistent with operational capacity and how to address such gaps. For those attending in person, please raise your hand and state your name and organization. Any responses from the crowd?
Mr. Claus. Yes. Stein, Southern California Contractors Association. This isn't really the excavator role, but it does come under our scope. I keep hearing from our members that it is really difficult sometimes to find the right person within an operator to talk about where the underground utilities are, right? It's hard to sometimes get a response or get a reference. So Again, when you're planning out this regulation, it's important to recognize that there should be a hard and fast response time. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? In the room? For those attending virtually, please raise your hand, teacher, and or dial *5 to enter the queue. Do we have anybody?
Yes, we have two online comments. First comment is from Michael. Michael, when you're ready, please unmute yourself.
Michael, you there?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Michael Glamrack. I'm a senior design engineer with Water Systems Consulting. We do a lot of linear design work as engineers. Just wanted to kind of, as it relates to timeline, voice support for previous comments related to giving some leniency on this timeline. We as engineers also do our best to plan for, especially if it's in support to the gentleman from AT&T's comment related to, you know, maybe the size and scope of projects. For medium to larger size projects, we're planning well in advance, many months, up to a year, sometimes more when there's environmental permitting. So these, you know, giving 30 days or even, you know, if there's a little bit longer, if that's needed to respond is fine. In fact, we often see that response period already and are prepared for that. So with response to providing utility information and maps and stuff like that. So I think we could be, you know, we'd be supportive of more lenient response times.
Thank you, Michael. Good comments. Anyone else virtual?
Yeah. Second comment is from Paul. Paul, when you're ready, please unmute yourself.
Hey, Paul, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
All right. For the response time, a reasonable.
Paul, who are you with?
This Paul with AT&T. Sorry about that. The proposed changes, we need to make sure that they ensure adequate time for us to be able to respond. Given the complexity of the review and coordination, we would recommend at least a 45-day response time to provide the maps. We are able to acknowledge a receipt of it in a timely, you know, within 5 days, we could acknowledge the receipt, but to provide the actual maps, it could take up to 45 days. There is, we have an NDA that would have to be signed, and then there is a possibility of fees that need to be paid. Any of those delays should not count against the timeline to provide the maps.
Good.
I have a follow-up question to that. Is that the same process that AT&T uses in other states?
For most states, yeah, for most states, yes. We do have a process in another state, but the maps that are provided are not to the detail that we could provide given a larger time frame.
Yeah. Next comment is from Logan. Logan, when you're ready, please unmute yourself.
I've Logan Downer with Excavate 11. I just wanted to kind of, again, speak in support of that 30-day notification window. The concern I have is with an increase in planning and design tickets affecting the ability to get the locating and marking done for the rest of the work being done in the state, right? A lot of these going out to immediately get, you know, this information could create a burden on excavators in terms of getting their active tickets marked when they need them to go perform the work that's right now versus the work that's maybe a year away. We don't want to impact that production. It's already hard enough to get timely marks as it is without some of the, you know, abuses to the response codes and things like that.
Next comment is from Morgan. Sir, please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak. Sure you unmute your mic.
Yeah, good morning. Mike Martin with SoCal Gas, if you're able to hear me.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody. So on behalf of, excuse me, on behalf of SoCal Gas, so currently our turnaround time is roughly 30 days when we get a request for GIS mappings. But going, I believe it was Logan had mentioned that, I do see a concern that if and when this is all implemented and what the guidelines are, that it could increase that amount of time depending on the, the amount of requests that begin to come in. It would put an additional burden onto all of the operators, and their teams who are currently supplying any information. So I think that needs to be considered. And then going back to having a ticket for planning and an actual ticket for marking for planning and design, the longer the better, in my opinion, because as it was also mentioned, the increase in these tickets could be taking away from resources away from work that is being performed within 2 days or say 14 days, compared to something that may be not even being considered for a year out. Now, I would also like to mention, going back to the first topic, I wasn't able to raise my hand in time, but, unfortunately, we also see that people will try to put tickets in where they have no intention of excavating, but it's more for a bid process. And so I would be curious to hear comments on that, or if there will be something in place so that if the system is being utilized for bids and not planning, what is the recourse from an operator standpoint that we would have to either not mark or not have to respond within a certain amount of time if the planning and design process is being used for bids and not planning. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike. This is Brittany Branneman. I just have a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah, Brittany.
You had mentioned that right now it's about 30 days for GIS maps, but you could see that time might increase with specific drivers. One of them you mentioned was due to the amount of requests that an operator would receive. Do you have a sense of what that threshold might be?
I don't at the moment, Brittany, but I can do a little research during this meeting and get back to you.
That would be great. At the end of the presentation, we have contact info. So if anybody wants to provide us additional information, that would be awesome. But yeah, that would be really helpful. And then you talked about you see 811 tickets coming in with no intention of excavation. Can you kind of shed some light on what fields you are seeing on those tickets that indicate that it's for design purposes and there's no intent to excavate?
Yeah, I can get back to you on that one as well. Like I said, a lot of this is what we hear from what my team in damage prevention hears from our locators in the field. So I don't have a specific scenario, but this has been something that I've heard passed along since I've been in this role for the past 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I think when you meant, or when you say bid purposes, that's for the engineering fee, right? The design fee, not the construction fee.
No, I've heard it from some of our field employees where it is an excavator or multiple, they'll get a request for for a job site. And then within a couple days, they'll get a request for the same exact area by a different company. And so then they start to inquire, and it would appear from our, I won't say investigation, but from our field communication, that multiple people are putting in for the same job with the same scope of install 1,000 feet of conduit, and it's more for a bid to see, so they can see how many potholes they may need to make, or, you know, any offsets they're gonna need to make before they can put a bid out for a job, an open bid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James Wingate, USA North 811. If I can follow up with that, Mike, I was on a CGA call, I know not everybody on this call does damage prevention all day long. So engineers, there's this group, Common Ground Alliance at the national level. Planning and design is not solved anywhere in the nation. It's an issue everywhere. Some states have made great progress, like Pennsylvania and Georgia and some others, but nobody has it mastered. So just, I don't know if that makes us feel good, but at least it's a known issue. But I was on a call the other day about South Carolina is doing something new where they have, instead of each subcontractor having their own ticket, they can have the prime have a ticket and then list multiples along there. Now, there's pros and cons to that, and we got into that a lot in the last USB meeting about responsibility of subcontractors versus general. So something to consider. But one of the things they liked about it was the thought about getting noise out of the system for the exact reason that Mike just talked about, with people while they're still in the bid process, and for locators to go and mark and then a week later get the exact same thing and now they feel bound to go back out again and confirm the marks they just put down are still fresh, and if not, refresh. Whereas if they were tied onto the same ticket somehow, then they know, okay, we already marked that, we don't need to, they're not specifically asking for it because they're tied onto an existing ticket. So that might be some kind of a hybrid thing we could think about. It may not be specific to the planning design process, but maybe. So just some out of the box solutions that other states are working on. That's South Carolina that's doing.
I have a problem with, I've never put in a job without a set of plans unless it's emergency. And usually the contractor that will call out a ticket without a cause for excavation, they can't replan. So you don't want those people out there to begin with, right? So I find that I've never heard of that. 40 some years of doing this stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead, Todd.
If I may, because that's a great point. Mike brings up, bidding. Why would we see these,
Yeah.
In the design? And, the legislature has passed many dozens and dozens of bills authorizing agencies to use design build authority for projects as small as $1 million. Design build essentially marries the contractor team with the design team. There's all kinds of different types, but generally speaking, it gives the authority for the public agency to say, I don't have all the plans. I don't know what exactly I want, but I want a bridge that goes across the Sacramento River on I Street. Can you design and then build that project? And several teams, usually larger contractors, come together and they design it. So I can see, and I can totally see a situation where contractors are using the 811 system to try to use it for design systems on large or even sometimes small design build projects.
I've done a few design builds and you still have plans.
You still have plans?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Were they private works or public works? Just curious.
One was private, most of them were public.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We have 2 more online comments. The next comment is from Mr. Johnson. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, I'm Dane Johnson, Senior Project Manager for CSW, a civil engineering and surveying firm located in the Bay Area. And so I came in a little late, so I will respond like Mike did earlier about slide 6, where it was about the planning and design ticket process. In that, as I'm speaking on the design side of things, is where this planning and design ticket to be initiated would be early in the design phase for us. And so as it relates to putting in for a ticket, we would expect then to receive some documentation within 30 to 45 days, which I believe is reasonable, which the discussion I believe was going that way. Because I think there's a difference between the design phase for consultants versus contractors going in and trying to provide for or requesting a planning and design ticket. So there's a difference there. And then as it relates to the current slide, again, I just reiterated that I believe because what we used to do in the past is we would have to call each individual utility company and request for this mapping. So I think in the early design phases, a GIS map should be something that can be generated pretty quickly, and then we would typically wait for those maps to be generated and provided to us, within that 30 to 45 day period. It's important for us because that's how we come up with our early design, right? If we're going for example, 30% design phase, we would need some mapping early and often. And so that coincides with us going out and doing, for example, a topographic survey. And so while we're waiting for the maps, we're waiting for the survey. And so everything is kind of in line with that 30 to 45 days. So that's just a general comment. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next comment is from Mr. Dustin. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Yeah, hi. I'm from SoCalGas as well, just following up on Mike's comments earlier. So the follow-up question to his comment was, what would we foresee in terms of potential impacts by the uptick in volume? I don't know how we could really answer that unless we had some sort of data on how much more of an impact that we would see regarding volume. We only have a few people in each region of our territory working on those, so that could impact our workforce, which obviously in today's environment, trying to cut costs on everything, we really aren't capable of doing at this point. So that would be one. The other comment I had was regarding for bids as well as other things. When people are calling in tickets, I can tell you that a lot of it is, instead of requesting maps, there are operators out there that are just putting right away to right away for a mile. They want everything marked, and those are pretty obvious. If they don't have a running line, specific running line, when they're putting the paint down for USA, that's clear that they're not out there to identify a particular area. They're just wanting to know what is out there in the entire right of way. So that's another impactful method that people are submitting in order for us to locate, that we might push back on. I know when I was a locator, I definitely would push back on those because that is not directed at a particular location or a particular running line. They're just wanting general information. So wanted to throw that out there. That's also something that we should probably be trying to put a stop to.
Can I speak on that real quick? A lot of times we will do that because if you're doing you have water services, you're doing the sewer line, you have house connections, so they go perpendicular to your line, and it's parallel in the street usually. Then the storm drains, you have connector pipes going from catch basins to the main line. So that's one of the reasons why they do that, because if you don't, you just do the main line, you're gonna have issues with the water service, house connections, and connector pipes for different, water, sewer, and storm drain.
Yeah, sometimes that can be worked through. The responders to the USA ticket should always be calling whenever there is a situation that they need to clarify. So that would be one of the clarifying factors. But sometimes you get that, and in talking to the requester, it's clear that they're not in that situation, and that situation that would be understandable.
Our next comments is from James. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hi, everybody. Jimmy Griggs again from the Sonoma County Water Agency. I'm going to have to drop off this call because I have an active construction project I'm going to be hopping on a weekly construction meeting for. So I just wanted to, touch base with everybody again. First of all, just thank everybody for getting together to discuss this, because this has been an ongoing issue for me as an engineer, going into my 10th year of designing linear underground projects where, I'm in this, fight with trying to identify what's in the ground before I want to put something new in the ground. And I really do feel like this is something that having a planning and design ticket available to me would be extremely beneficial, as opposed to having to jump through this potholing loophole that I'm just trying to gain information, right? And I understand the urgency of active construction projects, and I do not advocate for prioritizing design and planning tickets over excavation tickets. Perhaps there can be some leniency in that 30 to 45 day window if the utility purveyor is overburdened with active excavation tickets. But I'm also just an advocate for open lines of communication. Whenever you submit a ticket, a lot of times somebody who's a part of the utility locating department of that utility purveyor will give you a call, and instead of me trying to be dodgy and say, yes, this is for design and planning, but at the same time, I need to know what you have in the ground before I can say what I want to put in the ground. If I could just have an open communication with them and say, hey, I'm trying to build a project. It's a year out. I need this information within the next 2 or 3 months. I'm trying to obtain 60% design. And there's a couple of critical design points where I need more information. And if you guys could go and shoot some paint on the ground so I know approximately where your stuff is at, then I can decide, okay, I do need to pothole that because this is a matter of inches, this isn't a matter of feet. And I'm just an advocate for creating efficiencies where I can as a design engineer. And it makes sense to me to have the best information available on your plan set. I understand that paint is never going to be perfect. I understand that there's going to be stuff in the ground that you don't know is there until you dig it up. Plans are never going to be perfect. They never are going to be. You're always going to run into unknowns during the construction process. But the fewer unknowns that you run into, the more efficient and the cleaner your construction and installation process is going to go. So, providing a larger window for planning and design tickets, I think, is a great idea. Having that available as a resource to design engineers, I think, is a wonderful thing. Perhaps a mandatory phone call for a planning design ticket could be a way to weed out the people who are looking for bids or looking for, trying to weasel their way through the system for unintended reasons that we aren't seeing in this conversation right here, right now. I'm just, an advocate for creating more available information to engineers like myself who have run into this problem over and over again. And I would much rather identify a utility conflict while the project is on paper, as opposed to when I have an entire construction crew out on the site, a hole is 25 feet deep in the ground, and we ran into something that is now going to bust my project. And now we have a contractor that's on delay. We have a scrambling design team trying to find a solution, and the entire time taxpayer dollars are just flying out the window. So with all of that being said, I really wish I could have stuck around for the rest of this conversation, but I just wanted to, wrap up my comments with a final closing statement. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Next comments is from Mr. Lawrence. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Good morning, everyone. Lawrence Bergen with Pacific Gas and Electric, the Gas Transmission GIS Department. So we process thousands of requests for information for delineation maps out of our GIS department, both on the electric and gas side. Our process currently runs at about, once the NDA is approved, about a 2-week, using business days, about a 2-week turnaround time. So if you're gonna target like a month turnaround time, that is plenty in our view. I agree with the previous caller. Having that advanced knowledge is key to allowing some construction folks to run their projects smoother. Our main concern, and I'm sure we'll get to this down the road, is you all are probably good actors, right? And trying to plan your projects and do it. We're trying to protect the information that comes out on these delineation maps from bad actors, right? So that's top of mind for us. But as far as the timing of it, within a month is plenty of time in advance for us. And these are, of course, separate from the 811 ticket process that is still required. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bergen.
Got one last comment from Logan. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hi, Logan Downer from Excavate 11 again here. After James's comments, not James Wingate, James who just signed off, it was making me kind of think. He was talking a lot about, all of a sudden we've got an excavation 28 feet deep and there's a line that's going to blow up the whole excavation. Some considerations I think need to be made here because we're talking about these design tickets under the scope of 4216. And 4216 specifically states that the markings would not have any indication of depth. And so is this going to be something that would exist differently? Because 4216 has explicitly excluded depth. And then on the other, my understanding has always been that it's existed on a horizontal plane. So just something to consider in the way that is going to be included now, right? Because are we talking about providing depth? That changes some things. And then the other note I wanted to bring up is also in 4216, it states that lines may not be, marked, or if it's not energized yet, you're not going to get markings for it or have it there. So if there are two, adjacent projects and maybe there's a new gas line going in and it's not being marked yet because it hasn't been energized, it could affect this planning and design phase as well. There's just some gaps, I think, to be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Downer.
Yeah, no more on my comments.
Anything else in the galley here? Okay, thank you everybody for your comments. Great comments, a lot of good information. We'd like to now explore the quality standards and minimum information requirements. Under what circumstances should subsurface utility engineering or SUE be required as part of the project requirement during the planning and design phase? What minimum information should be required for a planning and design ticket to be considered sufficient? Too little information may limit an operator's ability to respond effectively, while overly detailed requirements may create unnecessary burden early in the design phase. With that in mind, does provisions of utility maps and records constitute the minimum information that should be required for a planning and design ticket to be considered sufficient? And how should current industry standards, such as American Society of Civil Engineers 38 quality levels and ASCE 75 as-built standards, be incorporated into planning and design requirements? We are particularly interested in what level of detail is appropriate at this early stage while balancing costs, workload, and worker and public safety. Those attending in person, you'll raise your hand and state your name and organization. And for those attending virtually, please use the raise hand feature or dial *5 to enter the queue on your phone. We will start with those attending in person.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Todd Wilson, Southern California Contractors Association. With regards to SUE, I think the excavators would like it to use all the time.
right? Because that provides a tremendous amount of clarity. We recognize, however, that that's not realistic. And it's up to the owner to use SUE. As far as minimum information goes, I mean, for us, I think the expectation, you know, on these types of plans, of course, this is going to design and engineers, but to share what you have about it. I think that's kind of the expectation. If there's information out there that's going to help in planning stages for excavation, then please share it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bosa. Anybody else in person? Any online comments?
Got two online comments. First comment is from Paul. Paul, please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hi, this is Paul with AT&T again. Just to reiterate that if a requirement is set, it should be only for large scale projects, such as a cost of over $250,000 or a size of, you know, greater than a half mile or a mile. Small projects would be a burden on all the utilities, providing maps, and also slow down any work that needs to be done. And routine projects should be exempt from it. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Anybody else online?
Yeah. Next comment is from Mr. Lawrence. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Good morning again, Lawrence Pergin, PG&E. As far as minimum requirements, there's a little bit of a history. Back in 1995, there was an agreement that we had made to that a company needs to show business need, and that we wouldn't just wholesale copy over or provide records and maps to outside agencies. You know, of course, data is a thing now, much growth in that area. So we do want to protect our folks, but we still provide our maps once we have a full understanding of what the project's about. You know, there's a pertinent need for the specific information, and within our own electric and gas and telecom group, you know, they review how they release the information, what level of detail. And of course, we will work with any of the third-party requesters to understand their project better and work through any questions or details that they have or need information on. So just want to put that out there. It is definitely tied to the work area, though.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergen.
Next comment is from Tom. Tom, please unmute your mic when you're ready to speak. Tom, make sure you unmute your mic.
Yes. I just kind of want to put it out there that, you know, ASE 38 and 70.
Sorry, Tom, who are you with, Tom?
I'm sorry. I'm with GIDA and representing ACEC, California.
Thank you.
So in the use of ASE 38 and 75, that should be left to the engineer or the surveyor that's actually doing the locating. You know, it's their determination of how the as-built and the paint marks on the ground from the utility purveyors mark and locate guy goes out and does it. But as far as the minimum information, I mean, I think the utility purveyors that are here on the line should understand that we're trying to prevent strikes in construction. And by limiting the research that is done by size of projects, creates issues in construction. It creates potential strikes. And if the desire of the board here is to look out for the safety of the public and to give the best information available to the design engineers and to the survey firms that plot utilities, then as much information as can be obtained should be given to them. Now, do we need detail like size of pipe, depth, and stuff like that? I mean, that can be limited, but just knowing there's a utility in the street or behind the walk or in the area of construction can help the engineer decide what their plans are going to do and minimize strikes in the construction aspect. Thank you.
Next comments is from Mr. Paul. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hi, that's Paul with AT&T again. I just want to add one point that currently to provide depth is something that we would not be able to do. A lot of our facilities could be greater than 100 years old. So providing depth on something that was placed that long ago would be very difficult on our maps. I just want to add that to it.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, your additional comments. Next comments is from Mr. Lorraine. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, there we go.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, that's pronounced Lowain Scott, AT&T. Just to follow up on Paul, my counterpart's message regarding depth measurements and things like that. We see one particular thing, we do not have records of depth measurements on any of our records. And again, like Paul mentioned, we have conduit structures and things in the ground, have been in the ground since the early 1900s. And then we still have active energized cables running through those same conduit and structures. So we do get a lot of requests for depth. And again, when our locators are dispatched out, they have no way of measuring depth or even looking for reference of depth on our cable records. So we want to make sure that's clear with everybody. And I do want to get into the scope of the projects, like the gentleman just mentioned. My experience recently, very recently, has been we have a lot of requests coming in for projects that are on private property, and I don't know what the driver is for that, but if we can put some language in where we're only dealing, not only, but we're specifically dealing with projects in public right-of-ways, that would help minimize some of the requests that we get that are has nothing to do with right-of-ways. And I know there was some folks mentioning earlier there was people trying to get bids done with this whole scenario of putting in tickets, whatever, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of that has to do with jobs that are on private property, not necessarily, a sewer main or things like that run down a public right of way, easement or whatever the case may be. So just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. That's it.
Next comments is from Dustin. Please unmute yourself when you're ready.
Yeah, just following up with the depth measurements. We do not. I concur with the other previous folks that were mentioning this. We don't have that information, so we would not be able to provide that. Our as-builts and such are primarily, unless there's an unusual depth, like if we're going under a storm drain or something like that, we don't even make note of that, especially with the aging infrastructure, like some of the folks mentioned, up to 100 years old sometimes, and that's the case with us as well in SoCalGas. Regarding one of the more recent comments on private property, we do have installations on private property where we have easements. The folks that are putting the tickets in, they're not aware of any potential easements in the area, so I can completely understand why they would still want to mark out private property. And if we have facilities on the private property, we are mandated to mark those out. So just want to make that clear too.
Thank you, Dustin.
Next comments is from Royce. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Yeah, hi, Royce Bedrosian with Contra Costa Water District again. The one thing I would like to say is for minimum information and like the required of what would basically be required for a design ticket to be at a minimum satisfactory, that's kind of it could be various in different ways. If I'm doing things or if I'm having a project and it's down a rural road where there's a lot of overhead and there's really low chance of anything underlying, I mean, it could be a really big project and really have a lot of scope, but have what I would consider lower risk. And then you can have something that's going across an intersection, just going where, you know, you got a lot of high potential, high risk, high data lines, gas lines, electrical lines, water lines. So I feel like there should be some sort of language in there that says if there is a higher risk or anything, at a minimum, the designer should reach out and make positive confirmation that everything is done and at least high risk lines are identified when they're in the area, and not try to just tie it directly to a monetary amount or a size limit.
Last on my comments is from Matthew. Please unmute your mic when you're ready to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Matt with SMUD here in Sacramento. The one question that kind of we keep talking about here is, and I'm sure it's been answered before, just off topic, I guess. With minimum information, if we give out this to all this, we're obviously not going to do depths. One, because we don't keep track of depths. Two, because we don't keep track of excavation that's taken place over utilities over the last 50, 60 years. But the question that we keep coming back to is, we're going to be excluded from any liability, right? If these maps are halfway correct and they base it solely off this and they come across a conflict, we're going to make sure that the utilities for a map that's 75 years old are going to be kind of excluded from any lost time, or has that been talked about or answered?
I don't believe that's been talked about.
I would like to make sure. We ran into a situation last year where a company was doing a massive water line project, and I don't know where they got their information, but their information was stating that all of our road crossings were at 4 feet. And they kept calling us out there, and what it was is they were trying to get us to tell them that the depths were actually deeper so that we could help them charge back the city for potholing that extra 2 feet over each line. And I want to make sure that we, you know, by doing this design and everything, that we can stay out of that. There's no reason to be part of that. This is information based only, and I would like to make sure we keep clear of any liability.
We have 2 more additional comments. Next comments is from Dustin. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Yeah, we have language on all the plans that we provide to requesters that speak to that, where their estimates, things may have changed in the field since our plans were drawn up, you know, things like that, that it basically tells them you can't rely on these. These are for reference, and you have to go out and verify in person with a pothole or through USA, or whatever the case may be, but not to rely strictly on the plans because of those reasons. So I would hope nobody's taking what they get from the various entities and just taking it as gospel, because that would be a very faulty method of planning.
comments is from Mr. Johnson. Submit your mic, ready to speak.
Yes, this is Dane Johnson, CSW. Yeah, I'm just speaking on the designer side again on that topic is that we, just like the gentleman just said, there's usually a disclaimer for any documentation that we do receive from any utility agency or municipality. And we, at least on the designer side, I can't speak for the contractor side, but we do understand that what the information is for informational purposes only, and that through our design process, if we believe that there's uh, instances where we need to go pothole, we will. So yes, we do our due diligence um, in the beginning of our design process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comments is from Mr. Lawrence. Submit your mic. Are you ready to speak?
Good morning again, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. I just concur with most of the comments. We have informational stamps put on all of our maps when they go out, that they are indeed snapshots in time, and that any point after that map is received, data can change, and people need to know that, right? So, and it's the same for any data that we share electronically, whether it's tabular data or a KMZ file, KML file, whatever it is that we would share, that would be subject to change as well. So, and we do not provide depth information either, for all the reasons previously stated by almost everyone else. So, thank you.
You.
I know more on my comments.
Thank you. Gotta make sure I'm on the right page here. Next, we'd like to discuss design data coordination and record keeping, which I think we've kind of covered a little bit here. First, how should the information exchange account for ticket updates, revisions, and evolving design information over time? When a design ticket involves multiple utilities in the area, how do stakeholders currently coordinate and track those tickets? And finally, what are the standard practices for closing a planning and design ticket? And how is utility data such as drawings or maps stored to facilitate future design request efficiency? Given that in many cases no new information may have been added or existing drawings may not have changed, how are those records maintained or archived to support future similar requests without requiring the process to restart from the beginning? Understanding current coordination practices will help inform what may or may not need to change under planning and design information exchange requirements. For those attending in person, please raise your hand and state your name and organization. For those attending virtually, please use a raise hand feature or dial *5 to enter the queue. We'll start with those attending in person. Seeing none, is there anybody virtual?
My comments from Ms. Lawrence. Submit your mic when you're ready to speak.
Good morning, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. Anytime that a project is evolving or designs have changed, it would be suggested that the design or planning firm reach out to us again to discuss the changes. Maybe we often do get a second request for these delineation maps to be updated, or just a second request because enough time has passed. As far as the second question, we package our electric and gas and telecom into one package. So I can't speak to the other utilities, but they usually come together in a package for the design or planning teams requesting this information. And as far as closing it out, we do retain the maps for at least 3 years and track who's made the request. But as far as future design requests, we always start from scratch because, as I mentioned earlier, the data changes daily, right? It gets updated on a regular basis. So we would always start over from scratch to make sure we have the most current version of that information being provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Glimrack with Water Systems Consulting. Maybe there's some sort of ticket number that could be associated with it that we could put on our plans, and then maybe it's closed out or referenced when the contractor eventually opens up the excavation ticket. At that point, you could tie those two things together. Maybe there's a field that's entered when they're putting in their excavation ticket. There's a suggestion there for maybe closing that out. And as far as the information exchange, I mean, it really is on us as the engineers, right? I mean, if there's changes that are happening, I think I agree with the gentleman from PG&E. We'd reach out back out to utilities, initiate that. So maybe this design ticket needs to stay open for some time after that, just as a permit would with Caltrans or something like that.
Next comments is from Paul. You may unmute your mic.
Yeah, this is Paul with AT&T again. As far as like closing out a planning and design ticket, we have multiple engineering groups that respond to each one of them. And we prefer not to have to provide a type of electronic positive response to the one calls to close out the design request. Those are all handled by our engineering groups providing the maps. So coordinating that could cause delays.
Next comments is from Michael. Please unmute your mic when you're ready to speak.
All right, yeah, thank you. I'll tag on to what I believe it's Paul was just mentioning, that when our planning department or engineering department receives requests currently, they're handling them. I think it would be difficult to provide an EPR to an actual ticket number when it's for a planning and design request for mapping or GIS information. I'm actually I have a confusion in my head between requesting GIS information and then today, in the first meeting we had in January, it was really about, I felt like the conversation was really around the mapping and providing maps and what can be provided and how long. And today's conversation is discussing that, but I'm hearing a lot also of an actual ticket going to the field for the operators, locators to respond to. And so, I mean, I'll ask the question, is the conversation for both to have a process for a planning and design ticket for the operator to physically go out and put paint down, along with providing maps in a timely manner? Or is it has the conversation just kind of evolved to include the putting the paint down? Because the way I thought I understood the requirements initially was that it was for the one call centers to provide information back to the operators for mapping requests with regards to planning and design. So I feel like maybe we're expanding more beyond what was originally requested in the Senate bill that passed.
Thank you. In my opinion, I think it's both. I think early in the design and planning phase, you want the maps, right? And as you proceed through your plans, you want to go ahead and get the paint out in the field to verify that. That's the way I always did it in the past. But, there might be some more consultants on. Or Todd, you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carm. It's just re-looking at the statute and how, what the legislature intended. It says, a regional notification center shall facilitate the exchange of planning and design information. So it's exchange of planning and design information. I frankly, and I relate to what the gentleman's saying. There's confusion here, and I think part of it is because we're using the term ticketing. I think you need to come up with another term. I would suggest using inquiry, maybe a design inquiry or design planning inquiry, because these, in my mind, and I think what the legislature intended, so these are completely separate processes. EPR shouldn't be applicable here. It's a different process. This is an exchange of information. So I would highly suggest, again, as the board's looking to develop regulation, to come up with a term. And, you know, when we looked at this in the summer of last year, we came up with a definition. We called it, of course, I can't find it. We called it a pre-planning design and or engineering inquiry. I think terminology is going to help us a lot here to avoid the confusion that the gentleman just mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Sloan.
Thank you.
We have a comments from Michael again. You may speak when you're ready.
Mike Martin with SoCal Gas. For that gentleman that was just speaking, that's exactly where I have kind of the confusion or the heartburn. It is in the term being used for ticket. Again, you know, my understanding of what the law was to provide, you know, more of the mapping. I do understand that, yeah, it could be a two-phase process, get the maps and then get the paint. But I think as it's being written out, I think there should be a difference between the two processes. So I appreciate the other gentleman's comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, no more my comments, sir. We got one. Ms. Florence, you may speak when you're ready.
Thank you, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. I also had a question about the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here. Are we trying to just establish rules around how the utility companies and the design teams interact with regards to the data exchange, whether it be a map or drawing or electronic information? Or are we trying to establish the thought of a data repository? Because I have different concerns in regards to those two different intents. So that's really my question of what are we intending to do here?
Again, if I may, Mr. Chair, the statute simply says the regional notification center shall facilitate the exchange of planning and design information. I think that's the overall.
Right, exactly. You have to start somewhere, correct? Correct. So you request some maps and you put them in, you put it in, you do your base sheet. That's the way we used to do your base sheet, and then you put in your utility that you're trying to construct. And then I think that's good enough to begin with. And then as you further go along with your plans, you want to make sure that the utilities that you show on your plan are the same as what's marked out in the field. And there should be a two-step process, I believe. And we can look into that and do some more information on that. Do you have a question?
Rebecca Kraus, USA North 811. From a call center perspective, obviously I have a little bit of limited perspective, but I've heard feedback from both, utilities and excavators. And I think that to some degree, we have the planning and design request. We call it a request because we agree, can't call it a ticket because those are two totally separate things, except where we've heard feedback from people today who have said they don't have that mapping information. Excavators have said they don't want that to be on them to update the information as they're digging. However, they are the people who are uncovering those lines most frequently, typically. So until either people are working together, until that gets built into contracts, you're going to continue to run into the same problems where people want maps with updated information, but the information isn't getting updated because unless they're doing maintenance or replacing those lines. So there needs to be some kind of give and take, whether that's built into contracts, so that information can be updated, so that people aren't asking in the design phase for physical lines, because the information that they'll be getting on maps will be sufficient enough. But until there's some type of give and take, that's not going to happen. So I think that that just needs to be considered, because if everyone's saying, oh, well, you need to do this, oh, no, they should do that. No, we're not gonna get anywhere, and this process isn't gonna work in the way that it's designed to work.
Thank you.
More comments, sir?
Okay, we have a scheduled break. 15 minutes, 10 minutes? 10? All right, we'll return at 10:40. Okay.
It is currently 10:40. The meeting has resumed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Getting back on time. We'll now transition to our second discussion topic, roles and responsibilities. It is equally important to clarify who is responsible for what during the planning and design phase. Clear roles help reduce confusion, prevent delays, and support a more consistent information exchange. The following questions are intended to better understand where expectations are currently clear, where they may be ambiguous, and how responsibilities are functioning in practice. Where do you see the most ambiguity in current roles and responsibilities, and how does that contribute to delays or confusion? More specifically, what are the designer's responsibilities when initiating a planning and design ticket? What responsibilities, if any, should regional notification centers have beyond notifying operators? And what responsibilities should operators reasonably be expected to fulfill during the planning and design phase? We are seeking clarity around accountability so that expectations are clearly defined in future regulations. This is also an opportunity to reflect on recurring experiences in the industry. If there are patterns of confusion or repeated challenges in the field related to unclear roles or overlapping responsibilities, we encourage you to share those examples. Identifying common gaps may help determine whether certain roles should be clarified or better defined moving forward. Let's get into discussion. For those attending in person, please raise your hand and state your name and organization. For those attending virtually, please use the raise hand function or dial *5 to enter the queue, and also state your name and organization. We will start with those attending in person.
Rebecca Kraus, USA North 811. I do think that to some degree, there has to be, I know we talked about EPR a little bit earlier, whether or not we're gonna call it EPR or something, there has to be some way for it to be tracked what the communication is, because currently for when the planning and design request goes out, if they get a planning and design request number, it's different than like a normal ticket number. And so we get that, we can see when the transmission was made. We have the capability to send it directly to utilities. Not everyone has opted to receive it that way. So, they end up getting phone calls or whatever, but there's no way to track what that communication is back to the requester. So if this is something that's going to be enforced, there has to be some type of checks and balances to see when the response, and whether that's the 30-day timeline or whatever ends up being, decided on, there has to be some way to track what the responses back to the requester are.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Just to address, I appreciate the board's attention to roles and responsibilities here, because when you look at issues from a policy perspective, I think there's a general tendency to focus on, what the outcome is, what we want, and not understand all the responsibilities and roles that go into all those stakeholders that are contributing. So I'm going to keep it really basic, but, and generally speaking in construction, the owner is the person that owns the property. And when they want that property, be it a public or private, they want it improved or a new structure built, they hire a design company to design and engineer the project. Through those design and engineering plans, we call them on the construction side, we call them the specs, the specifications. The contractor then bids on those specifications and then constructs the project. The role of the RNCs, the regional notification centers, is to simply coordinate as far as existing process to coordinate the location of underground utilities for the excavator. I think it's 14 days before planned excavation. Now, where the confusion gets sometimes is who's paying for what. The designer, of course, is being paid by the owner. The designer is providing, and when I say designer, I mean the engineer and the architect, those ones designing the project are paid by the owner. Now, we've talked a little bit about Sue individual, the past slide.
The question is, who pays for suit? Well, it should be the owner that should be paying for the suit, which would be a more detailed look and analysis of where the underground utilities are. So I think we need to keep it in those basic understandings that the owner owns the property, he's the one that controls, he or she's the one that controls the construction itself. The designer's the one that plans the improvement, and the contractor's the one that builds it. It's pretty much that simple. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anybody else in person?
Well, Ms. Lawrence, okay, I'm your mic and speak when you're ready.
Good morning again, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. I'm really glad to have followed that last comment because the additional roles and responsibilities surrounding the data exchange that we're discussing is and should be very well defined as well. As far as the design request or the planning request for data that's coming to us, that should, there should be some guidelines regarding a timely manner, guidelines, which is what we're trying to establish, right? Guidelines in whether or not they need to revisit that request in advance of this project going to construction, in addition to the 811 call. And then the responsibility of us, right, in providing that information to our customer, that it be, as accurate as it can be, as up to date as it can be to that point in which they requested it. It's turned around in a defined and quick manner. And that is our sole effort, right? In trying to provide that information back to folks, and to fulfill that role in to the public and to these requesters. So as far as confusion, the first response, that we don't have a clear checks and balances. We do send this information back. We assume they've received it. We only know if they have other questions for the information they've received, or if they make a second request to follow up in a future time. So those things are key to understanding the full scope of the process up to the point of construction. And I think that's important to line out here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergen.
Yes, Todd. If I can follow up just briefly, and I Todd Blumstein, Southern California Contractors Association. And there is another distinction I think that needs to be defined as far as responsibilities in comparison to the ticket process now. In short, I think there should be a fee associated with the request or inquiry design ticket. And I can just briefly explain it there, Mr. Clausen. There is a state interest in protecting the workers that are working on construction projects from being injured from dangerous underground utilities. That's SCC's primary responsibility. There's a secondary role of protecting the underground infrastructure. That is in the state interest to protect life and property. And because of that, the excavator doesn't have to pay a fee for a ticket. And that fee goes back ultimately to the ratepayer, right? Which is essentially the taxpayer, if you want to look at it from a public policy perspective. That's the state interest here. Question then becomes, what's the state interest on an inquiry or request? I'm going to argue that I don't think there is a state interest because the design team is trying to complete a commercial function. They're providing a product and a service to an owner who's looking to improve their property. Because that's a commercial interest, I really think there should be a fee associated with the inquiry request. Hopefully you follow that there. But I think that's, again, when you're looking at roles and responsibilities,
I don't think it should be the ratepayers to be the ones to put this bill. I think it should be the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bloomstein. Or the engineering firm doing the work for the owner. Right.
Sorry?
Or the engineering firm that is doing the work for the owner.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good comment.
Mr. Johnson, you may unmute yourself and speak when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Dane, CSW. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little confused on this roles and responsibilities too, where the question is, what are the designer's responsibilities when initiating a ticket? Because I mean, all we're doing is going online and trying to request the information, in that early planning and design phase. And so I think as we're all discussing this here is that it may be repetitive what I'm hearing, because if there's it depends on the project as well. So if there's a design build project, that's different process as it relates to planning design, because it's on the fly, versus us having a design bid build where we have to initially in the planning process try to gather all of this existing utility information. And so I guess it relies on 811 or whatnot to properly identify what are the needs in the application process for the design ticket. So I'm not sure what that is, but I'm just making the comment is we're, as the designer, if there's a fee associated with it, then we're fine. We just need to identify that and inform the owner of a potential cost associated with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
This online comments is from Ms. Lawrence. You may unmute the mic and speak when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Lawrence, morning, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E again. We are, as far as responsibility between planning and or designing and our role in providing information back, clarity really around what the project is involving to the best of their ability is really on the responsibility of the designer planning team in order for us to provide the best level of information back to them. And if we don't feel that we've received a clear understanding of that project, we will inquire deeper until they do provide a satisfactory explanation of what the project is. That's both to protect the public, but also to provide the correct information so the project can go off, without a hitch, right? So as to, which is within our control. And as far as cost, currently PG&E does not charge for this service. We are actually looking at that and have been since Q3, Q4 of last year of how to do that or what to do in that regard. But currently there is no fee for that service. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen.
No more online comments.
Thank you. Okay, discussion 3, procedural challenges and practical constraints. We now move into our third discussion topic, procedural challenges and practical constraints. It's important to consider planning and design phase communication and real world conditions. This discussion is intended to better understand operational limitations, cost considerations, and practical barriers that stakeholders may face. First, we'd like to begin by discussing the cost consideration. How do stakeholders currently approach cost recovery for facility planning and design costs? And should there be a cost associated with planning and design ticket? If so, what factors should determine how fees are applied, for example, project budget, geographical area, or complexity? Additionally, how would a mandatory planning and design information exchange may fit into your current workflow in a way that remains operational cost effective? And how might different fee approaches impact smaller companies? We would like to better understand the practical implications of different approaches to cost recovery. At this stage, the goal is to explore how various models could
affect participation in overall feasibility. We are particularly interested in understanding how any cost structure, if considered, might influence the stakeholders differently based on project size or organizational capacity. Your feedback will help us evaluate potential impacts in a balanced way and ensure that any future framework reflects operational realities across industry. For those attending in person, please raise your hand and state your name and organization. For those attending virtually, please use the raise hand feature or dial *5 to enter the queue. We'll start with those attending in person. Right, Todd.
Thank you again, Chairman. So I'm Todd Blinstein, Southern California Contractors Association. I clearly jumped the gun on the fee and the cost here. I didn't know we'd be discussing that in the next one. At least I didn't see the agenda. That's a great point. The final one on smaller companies. My initial response is, okay, let's look at, what company, or I'm going to use the term owner, right? What owner has a smaller piece of property or that they're going to improve? And I keep coming to the conclusion that on the smaller side, if there's the funds available to construct or improve the project, then there should be at least a minimal amount of funding available to access the planning and design information through the inquiry ticket. So I think for me, at least representing the excavators, that was the best response I could give. There is an issue here that I think the board should consider as well of enforcement, right? How are you going to prevent the continued abuse of the 811 ticket process for design purposes? And even another policy question, are you going to force the continued abuse by charging a fee? And so I think the board needs to consider either some type of enforcement action or through the regulatory process referencing existing enforcement that could be used, maybe not creating a new a penalty structure, but you really got to look at how you're going to utilize, how the state should utilize or force or encourage this utilization. And one way to do that, I would think, is to clearly reference the penalties for abusing the existing income system. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Kraft, USA North 811. I guess to piggyback off those comments, as someone who worked in the call center for many years, I think I do 100% agree with his statements, but I also think that operators have to, utility owners, they have to get on board with all of it as well, because I definitely took numerous calls where they would be trying to do a design request and the utility, whoever they got in contact with that utility would be like, no, you just need to call in a ticket and get it marked. And so we at the call center see that a lot. So until, it's kind of a hand in hand thing, operators and utility owners, they need to also get in line with that, so I guess that's my comment.
If I can, James Wingate, USA North 811, if I can elaborate on that, what we often hear is, and it's often in the telecom sector where an excavator submits a design request and the engineer receives some information back from Wingate Telecom, and but it's only schematic. And it only shows what side of the street it's on. It has no distance whatsoever from side of curb. And sometimes you can't even tell if it's in the road or behind the curb. Obviously, those are big differences. And so the engineer will say, hey, this is not accurate enough. I need marks in the field. And the Wingate Telecom representative will tell him, well, we don't have a process in place to give you marks except for through a ticket. So just create a ticket. And so that's how we end up with this confusion where the excavator is getting mixed messages. Where we're telling him, no, you can't have a ticket when you're still designing, contact utilities directly, but then some utilities are saying, well, we don't have a mechanism to get you marks outside of through a ticket because we hire a contract locator to mark for us, and therefore you have to do it through this mechanism. So yeah, that should be hopefully part of the system you come up with is is that if you say, utility operators have to respond by providing plans of some type, if the engineer deems those plans are not sufficient and how that criteria is, I don't know how you come up with that, but then you have to get into what happens if marks are in the field and is there a process? The utility operators need a process to provide marks outside of the regular 811 regular ticket process.
Yeah, that's a frustrating fact, and I've been there. So then what you usually do is you call for an excavation ticket.
Right.
To cover yourself.
Right.
Anybody else? Online?
We have an online comments from Scott. Scott, you may unmute your mic and speak when you're ready.
Yes, Wayne Scott, AT&T. Just want to comment on the project cost. I think that's a recommendation that I would go with as far as a project cost, being that when we get requests for records, we would actually put together a project ourselves for that particular location. And again, depending on, how busy the area is as far as our facilities and things like that, I would say project costs would probably be a better suited cost breakdown versus geographical areas, because geographical areas do vary, as we all know what's going on in certain areas. And I did have another comment about the responsibility of the owner of the project or owner of the property. We got to keep in mind that substructure facilities on private property is not owned by AT&T. That gets into California PUC tariffs that were put in place a few years ago, where property owners, whether it's private property, commercial property, doesn't matter, that all those substructures, pool boxes and things like that, substructure boxes are all owned by the owners of the property. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Next comment is from Mr. Seuss. May unmute your mic when you're ready to speak.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Not muted.
There we go. Hi, this is Jermaine Seuss with 811 or Underground Service Alert. Just wanted to mention about the comments on tickets that are created as a loophole to get around the P&D requests or project and design tickets. Since there are a lot of contract or utility operators that we meet with that mention contractors submitting tickets that they plan on not doing work. This was mentioned earlier. And tickets that are also routinely renewed month after month, sometimes years after the initial ticket request was submitted. Since we handle 2 states in Nevada, there's a automation that pretty much requires you to create a new ticket, or when a ticket is renewed more than 2 times, a new marking request initiates. In California, you can renew a ticket 999 times, and there's no requirement to remark the site. And we have a lot of utility operators that are in remote areas that would get inundated with tickets where they usually are used to getting maybe 5 or 10 a day. Now they're getting hundreds, and they're required to mark within 2 working days. It severely impacts their ability to respond within the required time. And I know that this new statute for Senate Bill 254 talks about requiring more time if the amount of volume of tickets that you're going to submit within a short amount of time would severely impact a utility member's ability to, fulfill their obligations. Just wanted to bring up the idea of enforcement or recourses for companies or contractors that are abusing that functionality, since they're pretty much required to submit work when they're beginning the work within 14 calendar days. I remember when I was on the phones in the call center. Anyone that would request a start time or a desired start time further than 14 calendar days away from the day they call, we would direct them to a project design or a planning and design ticket, since they have to begin work within those 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Next comments is from Ms. Lawrence. You may unmute your mic and speak when you're ready.
Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. As far as what factors should be determined on how the fees would be applied, we're looking at a couple of different structures, right? Because we don't do it currently, but definitely the geographic area, as was mentioned, maybe the complexity. Predominantly, what we're leaning on right now is the size of the request, the number of map pages that we would provide back to a customer, because it can be anything from one map to hundreds of pages, depending on the size or complexity of the job. An additional consideration would be if it's not just a PDF map or a GIS map that's being provided and it's data, tabular data, shape files, we would have to probably take a look at the fee associated with that. If there's a minimum fee, what would be the add-ons? So all of that we're looking at internally, but those are all the considerations that we are trying to put our head around and come up with a plan for 2026. We do work very closely with our own Locate and Mark department from the GIS team. And just the external requests, and I didn't really want to throw out numbers, but just in my department, we process 6,200 requests. And I know that's a far cry from what locators in our company had to deal with. So it turned into about 20,000 maps this year. So it's a lot. It's a lot to lift. And we don't charge for it currently, like I said. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have no more online comments, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, finally, we'd like to discuss operational challenges. When a design ticket response contains incomplete information, what is your current practice? For example, do you request clarification, document partially and move forward, or rely on third parties such as private utility locators to complete the design phase? In many cases, historical records may be incomplete, outdated, or inconsistent. What strategies have been effective in addressing gaps in accuracy of historical utility records for planning and design purposes? We're interested in learning how stakeholders are blending existing records with newer tools. For example, have you used approaches such as supplementing historical records with field verification, potholing, land surveys, or GIS? For those attending in person, please raise your hand, state your name and your organization. For those attending virtually, please use the raise hand function or dial *5 to enter the queue. We will start with those attending in person. No in-person comments? Online? It's quiet now. It's gonna be that time. James. Thank you.
James Wingate, USA North 811. You guys left a gap in the conversation, so I'm obligated to fill it now. There are technologies now that to overcome the age of records that we're facing. I mean, I get it. There's assets in the ground that have been here over 100 years that are still in use. We've heard this come up multiple times today, but I'm worried that has been an excuse for decades. Do we want it to continue to be an excuse for decades? No, we don't. So what are we going to do about it? And I know it's easier for me to say I run a call center. I'm not running a utility private company or public sector agency, and it's very expensive, and this ultimately flows back to ratepayers or ultimately the public. So I get that. But, you know, how much is being lost through these inefficiencies and damages, and especially when we have fatalities, right? So the point is, we've got to get these utilities into a GIS at some point. So how do we do that? Well, the tech is getting more affordable now. Locating instruments and I'm sure hands are gonna fly up now, but you know, they have locating instruments that have GPS capabilities, high precision. I won't get too technical, but where these can be captured as they're being located, and it can flow back to the GIS and updated that way. Of course, there needs to be a quality control process in there, but it doesn't have to be that you send locators to the field to mark the same line multiple times and never capture that positional data. That can be done more efficiently than ever before. There are smart pigs that go through pipes, even gas distribution, small 2-inch pipes or even smaller. They have small probes now that are brand new, that are still, admittedly, they're probably still a beta version, but the point is the tech is getting there for all types of utilities, even if there's no tracer wire, where you can find these assets and map them, and we can start to build the GIS and get us to the point where we want to be in the future. So I know some utilities are experimenting with them. Some other one-call centers across the country are doing pilot programs where they buy equipment and loan it to their utility operators to experiment. There's a pilot in Minnesota and one happening in Michigan that's about to start or maybe just started, but those will be ones to look at. Anyway, the things are happening more and more where this can be captured. I envision a point where at least USA North 811, we're interested in hosting some of this data. I know some of you have heard me mention this before, but this audience is not always the same on all the USB meetings. So, you know, I would love for us to host pothole data, abandoned line data, unclaimed line data that is found and discovered in the field, so we can serve it up to the next excavator in a Good Samaritan type effort to help prevent future damages. I think this technology is more affordable than ever if we can solve the legal side to help with liability of people relying on that too much, that you know, that we could get there. Other countries are doing this. This is, you know, in some ways, the United States is behind a lot of other countries in the world, especially Australia and some countries in Europe. So South Korea, Japan, a lot of other countries doing good things that we could learn from. Thank you.
Grabbing the mic and online comment. Please. We have your mic and speak when you're ready.
Yeah, hi, this is Royce Bedrosian, Contra Costa Water. One thing I can just say is, I mean, I would love to have everything what the previous commenter said. I can barely get alignment in my own agency on what we gather, how we gather it, where it goes, the layers of GIS, and the resources allocated for our GIS mapping, engineering, and planning side of it. And I'm in the operations and maintenance side, where I have to just react if there's a line strike or a main break, and we find out real time that our plans aren't up to date, our plans aren't accurate. And honestly, unless there's something that compels my company to put resources there, or actually say you will or shall, it'll just become a matter of opinion of, well, we don't have to capture that, or we don't have to do that, or it gets into the legal side of things of what are the liabilities if we provide that, what are the liabilities if we do this. Until we actually have something that says you shall have this, or update this, or compile this and put it there, we're just going to keep doing the back and forth. And like I said before, the only way that our staff, our 3 locators, basically keep things going in our service territory is they build a rapport with all the certain contractors and everyone in the known design firms in the area. And when we see a huge ticket come through for like 2 miles of whatever, we know that they're not going to do it all. We just have to say, how much can we get by now? And we basically create our little side processes and our little deals to keep things going, but it's not shared, and it's very dependent on the individual user. So if I have a USA locator that retires in 5 years, all their spreadsheets, all their information, all their continuity and everything, unless they take the due diligence of actually passing it on to the team, it basically evaporates with them. The new person comes in and we basically start over from scratch. So, I mean, I don't know what to do to other than just say you will have some sort of standardization across it and everyone's in alignment, which I think we're pretty much trying to get to, but I can't even get that alignment in my company as far as what department should have what and what plans are and where they should locate and where it should actually be archived at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next online comment is from Ms. Lawrence. Ms. Lawrence, you may unmute your mic and speak when you're ready.
Thank you, Lawrence Bergen, PG&E. I didn't answer initially because the question was specifically from the design or planning team when the response was inadequate. And I guess what I'll just speak up to say is that if something like that were to happen, really what most folks have already said is communication is key. Reaching back out to us, inquiring further into what they're actually seeing, what more information they're requiring, and help us help you in terms of answering the questions that you still may have. You know, like I said, we work very closely internally with our own locating team. So if they go out to do a locate on a request, we're usually on the phone with them if there's a question about what's going on in the area. So that's usually our response is, you know, just ask, reach out to us. And I brought up earlier what was the intent, whether or not we're trying to warehouse all data in one location or leave it with the operators. The reason I bring that up is there are vendor companies now trying to go around to different groups, utility operators, and collect their data in order to resell it or package it to folks who are interested in getting that data. And you know, while there's definitely some safety concerns there, we are still ultimately responsible for the data that we manage and on our assets. And so I just, you know, it starts and ends with us. So the communication is the key, right? Come back to us, ask the question. We would be more than happy to help you in that regard. Thank you.
Next comment is from Mr. Rubin. Mr. Rubin, you may unmute your mic and speak when you're ready. Make sure to unmute your mic.
Is what strategies have been effective in addressing gaps in accuracy. And earlier, one of the folks spoke about GPS, and GPS is a black box technology. So if you're walking along locating with a GPS unit, you're not aware of the quality of those coordinates, even though it's giving you a geographic location. The old plans most often will include curbs or some features that existed at the time. And so the way to close that gap on that accuracy is when field locating, is to locate additional features that tie the location to something that's tangible out there in the field. And so that's how you would close the gap. And curbs is a very common way to locate utilities. People can measure off of them because not everybody has the benefit of GPS or the understanding of the GPS. Collecting coordinates in and of themselves presents other dangers to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment is from Scott. Scott, make sure you unmute your mic. You may speak when you're ready.
Yes, Wayne Scott, AT&T. Yes, as far as our facilities being in the ground as old as 100 years ago, that's not an excuse. That's a fact. So just want to make sure that's clear. That and nobody misunderstands us when we say that we have things in the ground over 100 years. Not an excuse to say we can't get anything done. Now, we do have capabilities to track things GIS. We have done a trial in Santa Monica with the GPS coordinates like the gentleman just talked about out there on the fiber run. And again, he made references to other stationary objects and things like that. We weren't very convinced or very comfortable with the results of our test out there. But not to say that we've abandoned that, but we do have these electronic capabilities that we're working on. So I don't know how quick or soon we can get that up and running to the mass scale that we have our facilities out there to get things going. But that is in play here with AT&T. Just want to let you know that.
Thank you for the comment, Mr. Scott.
Got no more on my comments, sir.
Okay, so with that, no more comments. We now conclude today's workshop. We want to thank everyone for your participation. Your input is critical as the board continues developing the planning and design information exchange regulations under Government Code 4216.1. Staff and the board will review today's feedback and use it to inform future work, survey, and regulatory development. An upcoming survey focused on planning and design information exchange is anticipated in early March 2026, just around the corner. For those who wish to stay involved, we encourage you to participate in upcoming opportunities. If you have additional comments or feedback following today's workshop, you may submit them in writing to digboard@energysafety.ca.gov or reach out to the staff at the provided email up on the screen now. And with that, this workshop is adjourned. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Maybe we-